Welcome to the Ask Ken show with Ken Lewicki at channelinginc.com. And I would like to invite my host. He's going to be hosting me today. His name is the awesome, most amazing Kevin Hughes of Kevali Channeling, one of my amazing students who just rocks it. He's rocking spirituality right now. So the way that the Ask Ken show, you want to tell them the format and how this all works, Kevin?
You betcha. This is your show, meaning not Ken's show, even though it's called the Ask Ken show. It's the audience's show. They get to depict what we talk about, who we talk, not who, what questions are being asked. Yeah, I guess who as well. So if you want to ask Ken a question, keep it general. We don't get into specifics. It's not a mini reading session. It's more questions about spirituality. So if you have questions about spirituality, i.e. how work, you can even ask personal questions of Ken in his spiritual journey. You can type them in to your chat off screen. I will see those questions and I will ask them as we go. But as we're starting to get people to come in, if you can tell us where you're from, where you're tuning in from, where you're listening from, we always like to give your hometown a shout out. So that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I thought you were going to say, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, I'm from planet Earth, just to be a bit more specific. I live in Alberta, Canada, and to be even more specific, I live actually in Canmore, just a good hour-ish, an hour or so west of Calgary. And for those of you watching, if you ever come to this part of the world, it's spectacular, amazing views of most amazing mountains. And just living out here in the countryside is amazing. And I really try to, like, I teach, I try to live what I teach. So those of you who don't know, I teach people how to channel for a living, full time for a living. And everything that I teach my students, I try to live to the best of my ability. And so I'm really big about self-care and self-love and things like that. And so one of the things that I do is I try to, while I'm living out in the mountains, is I try to, get some nature time in, no matter what time of year, it doesn't matter. And whether it's go for a walk, go for a run, go for a hike, go for a snowshoe, it doesn't matter. Just spend some time in nature. There's just something rejuvenating about it. And that's why I decided to live in this part of the world. Lots of activities.
And anybody that follows Ken on social media, they see him hiking. We've had a bit of a resurgence of beautiful summer weather our way. I mean, I'm not in Canmore. I'm in just outside of Calgary in beautiful Airdrie, Alberta. The fastest growing community in Alberta, I might add. Anyway,
Maybe Canada.
maybe Canada. But anybody that follows Ken through social media, they'll notice one thing whenever he's hiking. I'm not going to mention it because everybody knows what I'm talking about when he takes a picture.
I have a big smile on my face because
you're always smiling.
I'm in my glory. That's true. That's true.
Actually, the picture you took or the video you took of you up top of the mountain, was that yesterday?
Yeah.
That was freaking amazing. Like, how high were you?
Like literally top of the world. Like,
yeah,
it was gorgeous up there. So, and those of you that are watching right now, the way that this works, the Ask Ken show is write your name in the comments. Write your name and say hello. First of all, say hello. Hello, everyone. And second thing is if you have any questions for me, whether it's spiritual, and the way that it works is when I get a question, Kevin will send that question to me, and then what I will do is I will channel the answers. So anything spiritual, what do you want to know? Do you want to know about spirit guides, like what they are, how that works, how your soul family works, the astral? Anything spiritual is fair game. Let's see what you got. And your questions is what makes this show amazing and magical. So what do you want to know? What kind of questions do you want to ask? Those kind of questions that people ask on those spiritual chat groups or Facebook groups and things like that. Like, what do you want to know?
And while we're waiting, obviously, we get a lot of messages during the week, and I kind of keep track of Ken and I keep track of the questions we get during the week. So one of the questions I get on a regular basis, Ken, is what is channeling and how can it be a benefit to our life?
Yeah, great question. Just to clarify, there's two kinds of channeling. There's the channeling that you use through energy work. So there's a lot of different kinds of energy modalities out there, bioenergy, Reiki. I could go on and on and on. There's a whole bunch of different kinds, and that's where you actually channel energy through like your body. You're like a conduit, and you get attunements, and attunements are symbols that are put into your auric field, and then you use those symbols and you tap into those to do all sorts of different things: healing, ascension, clearing, you name it. And that's channeling energy. That's not what I do. Yes, I do. I have Reiki Master and a whole bunch of other trainings, bioenergy and a bunch of other different ones. But what I do for a living is I teach people and train people how to channel. And channeling is where you actually connect with different types of souls or beings out there. So it could be like channeling yourself and your own soul or your own higher self or your spirit guides, and which spirit guide is it. So that's what channeling is. It's tuning into knowing who you're actually communicating with, how to get very specific detailed messages from them rather than just general, like, oh, I feel a message or I get an intuitive hit. And your intuition is actually it's very multifaceted. So there's a difference between like your instincts and your intuition. So your instincts is like that raw primal kind of like, don't go down this back alley in the middle of the night because something bad's going to happen. Well, that keeps you safe. That's what your instincts are called. Whereas your intuition could actually come, when you get that intuitive hit, as they call it in the industry. So that can actually be come from multiple different sources. It could come from your soul. It could come from your higher self, or it could come from one of your spirit guides. And if it does come from one of your spirit guides, which one is it coming from? And if it could also come from a multiple of those sources. So I've seen that happen not only with myself, but with my clients as I'm working with them and teaching them how to channel. I'm like, okay, so which one of your guide or guides is giving you this message? They're like, well, this one and this one. And some other times it's like, okay, which one of your guides is giving you this message? And they're like, well, this one and my soul. And I'm like, good. And another time it's like, well, where are you getting this message from? Oh, well, it's this guide and my higher self. That's right. Well done. Okay, so now we know what intuition is, and it's very practical. We know how to follow it and actually use it in our very practical way in our everyday life. So that's what channeling is, and this is what I specialize in, is teaching people and empowering people how to be able to do this their own. It doesn't matter whether you want to learn at very beginner levels or if you want to take it and be like really, really, really advanced. I do all that stuff.
Now, kind of a follow-up question to that, Ken. Why should someone learn? Like, why should they learn to channel?
Yeah, and this is a great question, and I do get this quite a bit. So the big why, and there's a whole entire activity I do in my channeling level 1 certification course where we go through all that, all the whys, like what's the benefits to you, how do you like, what do you get out of it? So the biggest thing about channeling, in my opinion, is that learning to channel really well is the foundation to all spirituality. Because when you know how to channel, you know how to connect, you know who you're connecting to, you know how to get very specific, detailed, practical information, you're going to be able to use that in all the areas of your life. And for me, what it's done for me is I've been able to follow my passion, find what my passion is, follow it, and I keep getting guidance on different areas of my life, like my health, my business, my finances, my relationships, my passions, my hobbies, my how to build, like, and it helps you to navigate through those things, like those really like weird kind of situations where it's like, like, oh, in this scenario, it doesn't really apply to anyone else, but in this scenario, how do I resolve this? How do I, like figure this out? And so I can tune into my spirit guides and they can give me like very specific guidance on what I could do for my situation in my area, like what's going on with me specifically, where somebody else going through a very similar situation might be something totally different. So it's very, very, very practical. And like so many people, my students that have taken it have said that they went in there like, wanting to learn spirituality and channeling, but it's helped with all the areas of their life, like every possible
Oh,
area they can imagine. And it just blows their mind. Yeah. Plus their self-confidence. And that's the big, big,
yes.
big side benefit is like people think that they're coming in to learn channeling, and you'll learn the hard skills, you'll learn all that. But the biggest reward that they get by the end of channeling level 3, my expert level, is the self-confidence that they have, where they just feel more confident in all the areas of their life, and they feel confident in what they're getting and how to know what they're getting because they practice it. I've taken them through exercises, and it's super powerful and life-changing.
That's awesome. Alana Panita wants to say, hey, hey. I forget where you're from, Alana. Let us know where you're from. Mike O'Dyer, he says, "Hi, Mike from Manchester, England," and he
You love,
says, "I love your hair." I think
you
he's
love
talking
Kevin's
about
hair.
me.
Totally Kevin's hair. Yeah.
I fixed it just before we went live. I had to make sure everything was in place.
I told him there's a couple of hairs out of place. So thank you, Mike. Thank you.
What
And Alana, I believe, is from Calgary. So
I
if you could
believe she's from
confirm that.
Calgary or the Calgary area, if my memory. And remember, if you have a question, type it in. We can get to it right away. We
Please,
often
everyone who's watching, say hi. Even if you don't want to ask a question, just say hi and where you're from so we could give you a shout out.
we often talk about our soul, Ken, where we say we take our soul leaves our body and goes back to the other side. What does our soul retain? Like what from each lifetime do we retain stuff to our soul?
Yeah, so not everything. Most of us, we've incarnated on this planet Earth, hundreds, if not even thousands of times. And so, uh, let's say, for example, we're living a life and we're going through that life. Every things are going to happen. You're going to get a whole spectrum of experiences, good, bad, ugly, and everything in between. And what happens is when you die and you cross over, you go to the astral realm, and you'll be in the astral realm with your soul family, and then you'll reside there for a period of time, and then when you want to incarnate again, then you'll come down, you'll incarnate most likely on Earth, and then, or it could be anywhere in the universe really, but let's say in this example you incarnate back on Earth. But what happens is your soul is the core central part of who you are and what makes you up as a human, and it is that part that comes with you from lifetime to lifetime. So then when you incarnate, a lot of that stuff and the experiences that you've had in previous lifetimes can come with you and affect you in this lifetime, again, good, bad, and ugly. So the cool thing is that when you learn to channel and connect with your soul, there's a couple things, like really powerful things that you can do with your soul. First, you can find out, and if there's anything that's in your past lives that maybe aren't serving you in this lifetime, that you can heal and clear, which is good. You can find things in your past lifetimes that were good for you, that are serving you, that you want more of, and you could go back to those past lifetimes and retrieve those memories, those skills, those traits, and you could bring those back into this lifetime and empower yourself so that you have more of that in this lifetime. And then another cool thing that you can do with your soul is you can find out why it's chosen to incarnate, like what it wants to get out of this lifetime, how it wants to grow and evolve in this lifetime. So you can really start to focus your life on this area of your life. So you're not just kind of like going through life like kind of like, whichever way the wind blows, but you actually like have a focus. And your soul's one of those areas of your life that's not, or one of those aspects of your body that's not really like loud and prominent and in your face. It's what they call the quiet whisper of the soul. So it takes some practice, and that's what I walk my students through, and some practice of actually like quieting yourself, tuning into your soul, and actually figuring out what it wants, why it's here, any kind of messages it wants to give you along the way as you're navigating the journey of your life. It's a really beautiful component and aspect of you. I just love working with it. And then there's Akashic records that's tied to it, and like it's all intertwined in a cool way when you learn how to utilize all that stuff. So it's sophisticated, and yet it's simple and it's precise. It has a reason for being here, and when you learn to communicate with it and find out those reasons, you can live the most magical life you could dream of. It's beautiful.
That's awesome.
It does
Mike,
take work, but it's worth it.
I'm going to say hi from a few people. Danielle Renee Donnelly from Alberta Beach wants to say
Woo!
hi.
Hi, Daniel.
Irene Irwin from right here in beautiful Airdrie.
Hi,
That
Irene.
is awesome. Deborah Farkash says hi. She has a question as well that I'll get to in a bit. But
Okay.
the first one comes from Mike in over on the other side of the pond. Says, do you believe in the Ouija boards?
Yeah. So like I teach my students in my channeling level 2, we go through things like pendulums, dowsing, muscle testing, dowsing rods, angel oracle cards, numerology, rune stones, and I could just keep going on and on. There's a whole bunch, including and a Ouija board is another tool. So it's not so much about the Ouija board like that. Like it's been given a bad rap, And it's not that it's good or bad or right or wrong. What it is, it's basically another tool. And it's not the tool that makes it good or bad. It's the person using it and what's your intention behind it, what's your motives and all that. What's really cool though is any of those tools with channeling and learning how to do it, like where you get to more advanced levels, is you can eventually get to a point where you surpass any of those tools and you're just using it in your everyday life, like it's an everyday part. And that's where I'm at in my journey with my channeling, and that's where I want to get my and bring all my students. Let's get you to this point where it's just an everyday part of your life. And if you bump into somebody, like at a fair or a festival, or at the grocery store, at work, or whatever, you can just go ahead and channel and get the answers right then and there. You don't have to pull out a certain, like card deck or tool like a Ouija board or anything like that. You're just like boom, 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 getting the answers, and you know who you're getting it from, and you're getting very advanced, accurate information about what you need to channel. And it's just and you have your eyes open and you're having a normal conversation with that person, and you don't need any of that stuff. So there's nothing, again, good or bad or right or wrong about any of those tools that I mentioned, including Ouija boards. It's the person using it that matters more than anything.
Now I'm just going to follow up this question because I get this quite a bit, even doing my sessions. Is his friend said it's connected to evil spirits? Is that correct?
Yeah, so again, it's kind of been given a bad rap because the whole Hollywood thing and their horror movies and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So in the ideal world, I would love to say that everything spiritual is just love and light, and you fart sprinkles out your butt and glitter out your butt, and everything's unicorns and everything's fine, but it's not. It's really not. There is some things that are not of the light to do with spirituality and things like that, and there are things like other kinds of black magic and other things that people do in different parts of the world, or even here in North America or anywhere. It doesn't matter, Europe as well. And don't kid yourself, it's a real thing, and it really is. And I've been through it and affected by some of it. I don't do it. I don't practice it. I'm very, very strict with my students, and I tell them, like, we go through a whole ethics section about working in the light and operating in the light. So the answer is no. Again, there are things that are not of the dark, and they could come in through any of those other methods that I mentioned earlier, or they could come in through a Ouija board, or they could come in with none of that stuff. And so, what's more important to me is teaching my students how to identify anything that is not of the light, so that I can teach them the tools. I'll teach you the tools on what to do with it, so that you don't go out looking for this stuff, but if it comes across your path, you can identify it. I'll teach you the tools of what to deal with it. But most of the time, the bulk of the time, you're going to be operating in the light, and just live your life, an amazing life in the light.
That's awesome. Great answer. Deb, Deb asked a question. It's more specific. I'm going to generalize the question. Are Can spirit guides help us when we're going through stuff in normal day life?
Yeah, a lot of people think with spirituality and channeling that channeling only helps with spirituality, and it does. It's a huge part. What I've noticed over my career working with thousands of people over the years is that most people have between 3 to 5 spirit guides during any one season of their life, and some have 2, some have 6. But in general, it's that range, and it could change during different seasons of their life. So each guide helps us with a different area of our life. And so what I do is I help my students to determine what area this spirit guide wants to help them with, and then how to really utilize their services and guidance to the fullest. Let's really, really hone in on how they're trying to guide you in that area of your life, like relationships, or being a better parent, or your health, or fitness, or finances, or how to help you with things like like your passions, or maybe it's like a different direction in your life. Maybe it's like career. So there's so many different areas that your spirit guides want to guide you, because it's not just spirituality, it's your overall life. Like, why did I choose to incarnate? What am I here for? And that's where your spirit guides from your soul family, that's where they help you with. And that's when you can make this spiritual stuff really practical, like everyday
Yes.
practical in all the areas of your life. And that gets me fired up and excited, because it's so critical to spirituality and living your best life now.
Was that noise on your end or my end, Ken?
Probably mine. Yeah.
Okay. I was like, whoa, hello. I'm learning to answer.
The spirit guides are agreeing with us.
Exactly. This is a great question. It was somebody I think had sent you this question because you added it to the list just recently. And I would love the answer. What is New Earth and how is it happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of people think you may have heard in the spirituality industry, people talk about New Earth this, New Earth that, and all this stuff. So there's a bit of misconceptions out there. They think that one day we're like this Earth, and then the next day all of a sudden it'll be the New Earth. It'll be like this big like switch, like one day this, next day that. Actually, we are going through and transcending or ascending into the New Earth. We are actually right now in this moment we are moving and shifting from a 3D planet more into a 4D planet. And everyone who's watching, welcome to the journey of this new Earth, and we're all creating it. That's why, like, I strongly feel that we can make this world a better place by teaching people how to channel, by me teaching people how to channel, and also because can you imagine like how much better this planet would be if everyone was tuning into their spirit guides and actually following their guidance, right? So that's why I do what I do, and it's not just about whether we like it or not. We are ascending, like we are transitioning from into this new earth. What I want to do and my role is to help people do it in a healthier way, a more on purpose way. Like, why am I here? How can I do and contribute to what I'm meant to do? And it might just be learning to love yourself and self care, or it might be a bigger thing like filling coliseums and have been a big influencer in the world, or it could be maybe just raising a family or kids or grandkids, and then they are the next generation that really helps this world ascend into a more healthier new earth that we're ascending into. So that's what we're doing right now, and I'm actually excited to be a part of it. And all of you watching, you're a part of it. So let's get on board. Let's start. I don't know about you, but the way that my parents and grandparents did things just aren't working anymore. The way that they used to do things, we can't keep doing it the old school way. We need to figure out a better way and a healthier way to do it. So that's my role, is to help people tune in to find out how they can contribute the best to this new earth that we're ascending into.
Awesome. Heather Rose wants to say hi, Ken. I'm not sure where you're from, Heather. If you want to plop in where you're from, that would plop in, type in. It's a new word for type, is plop. And don't forget, folks, if you're watching and you have a question, just type in the comments your question and we will get to them as soon as we can. Heather Rose is from beautiful Edmonton, Alberta. Did I just say beautiful Edmonton, Alberta?
I lived there for 13 years. Yes, Heather, it's a beautiful, wonderful place. Welcome, Heather. So glad to have you. Thank you for tuning in.
We talk all the time, Ken, in our when we're talking spirituality about souls. Is there different types of souls?
Yeah, let me clarify something. So all souls were created at the same time. So a lot of people think like there's a new soul, old soul, star seeds, things like that. And basically, we're some people who think like they're an old soul, they've incarnated, let's say, on this planet Earth like 100 times, 1,000 times, or even more, and they would be considered like an old soul to this planet. And then let's say another soul incarnates on another planet, maybe 100 times, 1,000 times, or even more, they would be considered an old soul to that planet. So, but if that soul decides, oh, I'm going to incarnate here on this planet, and they've only incarnated a few times, or maybe it's their first time or whatever, they would be considered a new soul to this planet. But if somebody incarnate from this planet who's incarnated thousands of times incarnates on that other planet, they would be considered a new soul to that planet. So this whole like labeling souls and all that, I try to stay away from it. More so, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. It's just I've found people's psyche around it, like they like to get into this hierarchy kind of thing,
Yes.
this kind of what I call spiritual ego kind of thing, where they think
One
either,
soul isn't better than the next soul. They're all
yeah,
equal.
or they're
Yes.
better, or someone else is less than, or I'm less
Yes.
than, or that. And there's none of that. Like I said, we're all souls, who've been created at the same time, and we're all on our own spiritual journey. And so I try to shy away from like people getting too caught up in the types of souls out there, because then I find it creates separation, and we are
Yes.
moving, or what I want to encourage everyone to do is move more towards unity, and not divisiveness, but more unity and more cohesiveness, and working together and collaborating regardless of our like, it's kind of like races on the planet. Like, I could care
Yes.
less what race you are. If you're cool and you're awesome and you want to, do some really cool stuff, let's go, let's rock and roll. Like, it to me, that it doesn't matter your demographics, your religion, your beliefs, or whatever your all that stuff.
We could
It's
go on and on and on.
Yeah, and the same thing
Yes.
comes with when people try to classify souls. Now they're getting into separation and what's different about them, rather than our common thread, which is we're all just amazing, beautiful souls on our own evolutionary path, trying to do the best we can, and we're our own separate souls, yet all connected at the same time, which is really beautiful.
I love that we're all connected. I just, yeah, I get goosebumps when you think of that, because it doesn't matter your sexual orientation, race, creed, color. It don't matter. When it comes down to it, your soul is a soul is a soul.
Well, one of the
Um,
great things about that, Kevin, though, is if you think about it, like, I've lived many past lives and many lifetimes, like many, many past lifetimes. And in those past lifetimes, I've been pretty much every single race on this planet.
exactly.
I've been a male and female many times. So for me to be sexist against someone just doesn't make sense. Like, how could I? Because I've been a female many times, or I can't be. How could I be racist against someone of a different race or different culture or whatever ethnic background, when I've been that ethnic background probably more than once, if not several times? So I'd just be racist against like, it's
It,
mind-boggling.
it
But a lot
is.
of people don't understand this. But when they understand this at a spiritual level, and they've actually experienced past lives, and they're like, oh yeah, I've been a female native person, or a female different ethnicity, or whatever, or male this or male female that.
Yes.
Oh, okay, now I get why it's not cool to be bashing someone of the other sex or bashing someone of another race. It's not, because it makes no sense. It's like, because I've had that happen to me in past lifetimes, so why would I do it in this lifetime to someone
Exactly.
of the opposite sex or a different?
Is um incarnating on one planet more, are souls in the astral realm, are they lined up to incarnate on Earth more than they are somewhere else? So is Earth a prestigious, a more sought after, just like I want to go to Mexico because it's warmer, and I don't, when I walk outside in November, my face doesn't hurt.
So I'm actually channeling right now, and I'm getting the answers no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's actually too many variables to say like that's a yes or a no kind of answer. A lot of people, humans on this planet, they want to say that, this is the center of the universe. This is like the spiritual hub. This planet's really important. This. So it's all about us and how. And I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's not. However, there's lots of other planets in the universe that most people watching have incarnated on. And who's to, again, we're getting into that separation. Like, is one better
Exactly what
than
I
the
was
other?
getting at.
Earth, and like Earth is Palladian is just as important as Earth, and Earth is just as important as Palladian. And I could go on and use lots of examples.
Yes.
So again, I try to shy away from any of that. I think the more important thing is why am I here, and what am I meant to do with this lifetime on this planet, and let's make the most of it.
Cool.
Like, that's a bigger, more important question than
I love it.
who cares if this is a more important planet than another one. Does it really matter? It more matters, what am I going to do with it? So I tell my students, I say, do what you got with where you're at. Do what you can with what you got with where you're at. And that can be whether you're on this planet, or whether it's a situation or circumstance you're going on in your life. Maybe you have some things that are holding you back in a certain area. Well, what can you do around that area? What can you do around that situation? Do what you can with what you got. So like, if we
I
look at
love
it,
that saying.
yeah. So if we do that with this incarnation, and you ask yourself, what can I do right now with what I got, with where I'm at in my journey right now? And you'd be amazed at what you can do, no matter what's going on in your life, or no matter what's happening, physically or mentally or emotionally or whatever.
Yeah.
It's infinitum. But yeah, we can all do amazing things with whatever this life that we're given right now.
That's awesome. Danielle Donnelly has a question. She says, what is your perspective on QHHT? I have no idea what QHHT is, so you might have to enlighten me on that first.
Yeah. So first of all, hi Danielle. Second thing is if you can elaborate, or there's so many TLAs, three-letter acronyms out there in the world. So
Yeah, I'm like QHHT. I was trying to put the acronyms together, and I'm blank. So Danielle, what is QHHT? Because we're both kind of looking at each other, going, "We're not really sure. Sorry." Um, while she's doing that, um, yeah, let's go to chakras. What's the best way to clear our chakras?
there's actually a number of ways. So obviously taking Reiki training or any kind of energy work training. I mentioned bioenergy, and there's a whole bunch of other ones out there that like work with energy is kind of foundational. I feel for anyone who wants to be in spirituality. Like it's just so empowering. Like yes, you can learn all these different modalities for helping others, but what if you used it mostly primarily for yourself? And I use my trainings for myself, like on an ongoing basis. So that's definitely one way. And there's really advanced techniques you can do with all that stuff. It's not just basic elementary. However, there's also a lot of really good ways. Like there's like things like taking a salt bath. There's things like, hugging a tree. And yeah, like yes, I do. I hug a tree. It's just beautiful, and it's that exchange of energy, and in a
Oh yeah.
such a healthy way. It could be things like running energy through your body, where you can like psychically just like run that energy through your body. So one of the techniques I teach my students is channel using source energy, is what I call it. So basically, you welcome source energy to come in through your crown, and you run it through your systems, and that cleanses your chakras as well. And you can, of course, you can take that at deeper levels. There's just a whole bunch of like different. There's like, I keep feeling like certain crystals also really can be very powerful and useful for um, clearing your chakras or just discharging energy. Sometimes a good grounding crystal can help you to discharge it. Sometimes like a selenite kind of crystal, waving it across you, you can feel it actually clearing your chakras. And then, of course, going to practitioners and healers that actually specialize in this and have formal training in how to clear chakras is also helpful. And I'm a big proponent. Everything I do is I try to encourage, like empower my students on how to do it themselves. So if you do have any trainings, ask yourself, when was the last time I did any self clearing, self healing? And if you don't, maybe you want to get some training so you can be empowered and have the tools on how to do this stuff. But things like a salt bath, anyone can do it. you know
Yes,
Things
exactly.
like going
Yes.
out into nature and
Hugging a
not, no
tree.
music, no distractions, just go in there and sitting in a bush or something, or a park or something for a period of time, to just or touching the ground, no matter what time of year, just something where you're breathing techniques. I could go on and on. There's so
That's
many, so
awesome.
many.
Awesome. Okay, so quantum healing hypnosis technique is
Yes.
what QHHT stands for. So what's your do you have experience with it?
Not enough to comment on it. The cool thing about what I do that's different than a lot of people is I teach my students how to use channeling. So no matter what kind of technique or modality you've been taught, you can now take what you've been taught and take it to way higher levels. And the reason I say this is because any teacher, it doesn't matter what they're teaching, they can only teach when teaching groups, they can only teach in a very generic form to basically meet the masses or teach the masses. But then when you do, like, for example, one-on-ones with me, I will like help. It doesn't matter what modality it is, because what I have the ability to do is tune in with your guides, figure out what that modality is, and then teach you how to say, okay, this is what you were taught. Let's see how we can take it way further heights with the channeling, learning to channel your guides, and how they want you to take it way above and beyond what you've been taught, no matter what modality. I've had students from all across the world come to me with things I've never even heard of. I'm like, okay, tell me a little bit about it. Okay, good, we're good to go. Let's go. And then we start doing things. And like 20 minutes, half an hour later, they're like, oh my God, I had no idea I could do all this crazy stuff with this quantum healing touch or whatever it is. Like, it's just insane what you could do with channeling.
I'm being told it's basically past life regression.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Um, have you done past life regressions before?
Yeah, so I do past life regressions either one-on-one with my students, and I also do it as standard with everyone in my channeling level 1. And there's a number of reasons why I do this. One of the reasons I mentioned earlier is because I want people to not just know that past lives actually are a real thing, but I want them to experience it. And I want them to experience it themselves, because it's going to help them to realize that they're not just this body, that they're not just this lifetime,
Yes.
that they are a person that continues on from lifetime to lifetime. And then it also helps them to relate to others on what they're going through, but it also helps them to understand things on a more of a soul level, like what happens when we go lifetime and all that stuff. So I just do it as standard practice. I have my students experience a past life on this planet, and then I also have them experience a past life on another planet. And the reason why I do another planet is because I want them to know that they've incarnated on other planets as well, not just know it, but actually experience it, so that they realize, oh yeah, a soul is a soul is a soul. And okay, I'm an alien too. Like I've like lived on other planets. So when we get away from all this stuff, like, oh, aliens are somewhat better or different or whatever, they're not. They're just you and I, except we've incarnated in a different container, a different physical form on a different planet. And so when we get past all that stuff, and then what it also helps with is that if we ever get a spirit guide, and it's rare, but if we ever get a spirit guide who presents themselves as a non-humanoid form, it's because they've incarnated on another planet. You've probably incarnated on that same planet. So then that guide can relate to you and how you had a relationship on that other planet when you lived a life together over there. So it helps us so many different things, and then it also helps us to get away from, like in my more advanced levels, when I teach people to channel souls in the astral realm, they realize there's all these different kinds of souls out there, like random souls and um, soul family members, non-soul family members, ascended master kind of souls, all the different kinds of souls out there, and I get them to actually experience and channel them, which is really wild, and to feel and notice and identify the different characteristics of each of these different kinds of souls, so that you realize that it doesn't matter which planet we incarnate on, it's just our container that's different.
I remember you talking about this, and it was so out of my realm. And then we did a seminar, not a seminar, we did an evening in Calgary, and we had somebody that actually had a spirit guide come through that wasn't a humanoid. And we were both like, wow, what the hell was that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it was cool. Very
yeah.
cool.
It's not
This
that
is,
common, but it does happen. But the other reason I teach my students about past, like actually take them through a past life regression, is so that if they do come across somebody else that does have a spirit guide that is presenting themselves as non-humanoid, they don't be like, "Hey, what's going on? Why don't I have that?" And they start comparing. And no, because at this season of their life, they might have a guide who's non-humanoid, but then the next season they might not, and then you might not this season, but the next season you might. And then does that make you all of a sudden better? And then the season after you might not. Does that make all of a sudden you less than? No. It's so let's get away from all that. It's just the physical container.
yeah, exactly. Um, Leading right into that, this is a great question. Different books and different teachers teach different things. How do I know what to believe?
Hmm. And that's where channeling is the foundation to basically all learning, because when you are empowered, so I teach people to be their own psychic, basically to figure this out, know where they're getting the information. And I tell my students flat out in my workshops, I say, especially later workshops, once I've trained them and taught them how to channel, I'm like, don't believe anything. Don't even believe me.
Yes.
Everything, every single thing that I teach you, you're now at a point in your journey where you can check everything. And I could be wrong. Maybe I am. And if I am, say something. Maybe I'll check. We'll check together. We'll figure it out. We'll flush it out. We'll work it out together, because I've been wrong before, or it could be. But and I say anything that any other teacher you learn from, you now have the ability to check this, and that's why being empowered on how to channel and how to like check from your guides of whether that person's saying something or not. And I want to make it clear, like sometimes you're going to get those red flags where there's some people you're definitely not meant to work with at all. So stay far away from that if you're getting that.
Yes.
But then there's other times when it's like you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of concept. So for example, One time I was reading a book from a really awesome, amazing spiritual guy, and I'm reading through the book, and I channel while I'm reading. So I'm like reading through it. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And then I get to a section, no, not quite, but I keep reading. I'm like, yes, 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 that's accurate. I'm checking as I'm reading, and not quite like this. So what would be more accurate? Oh, more like this. Yes, yes, yes. And this guy's a beautiful, amazing spiritual teacher. He has good intentions, all that. But I don't say, oh, because one or two things I'm getting that are wrong or incorrect, I don't go and write him and say all the, you suck or whatever, none of that, because it doesn't matter. Who cares? Overall, he's pretty accurate and pretty good. And then I also don't throw the whole thing out and say, well, because there's a few things in that book that don't, like when I check with my guides, don't resonate or I'm getting as inaccurate. That doesn't mean that there's not still really good things I can learn, and that I shouldn't maybe read some of his other material and things like that. So yeah, just use your discretion on that. Like, we don't want to go one extreme or the other, and nobody's perfect. I had one of my students, not necessarily for me, but for other teachers, they think that every single teacher has to be perfect and have their life in order and be like, and I'm like, boy, that sure puts a lot of pressure on the teacher, because what teacher out there is like that? What human being is out there is perfect?
Exactly.
None are. And I tell my students flat out, like, hey, I'm still going through this healing journey. I'm still going through this evolution journey, and welcome for the ride. Let's all go through it together, and we'll learn together, and we'll figure this out together, and let's go. Let's lock arms and go on this journey into this, as we call New Earth, as we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Shaylee, I'm not sure where you're from, Shaylee, but she wants to say hello. How are you, Ken?
Hello, Shaylee.
Um, can spirit guides do? I'm going to rephrase this question. Are all spirit guides members of our soul family, or can they be members of other people's soul family as well? Did that even make sense when I said that?
Yeah, can you say that differently?
It's like, huh? Um, are your spirit guides always members of your soul family on the other side, or your spirit family on the other side?
Yeah, that's a simpler way to ask it. The answer is
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. So let me explain something to the audience watching. It's actually fairly simple. Is that when you die and you cross over, you'll go back to the astral realm to be with your soul family. However, while you're here and incarnated on Earth, certain members of your soul family will help and assist you while you're incarnated. So you're not going to have like other souls from other soul family members be your spirit guides. They're not your spirit. They're not, in my experience, I've never had anyone, not even myself or any of my clients or students, ever have guides that were not members of the soul family. So the reason why it's your soul family members that are your spirit guides is because you've literally existed with them for eons, forever. Have you ever met somebody who's incarnated on Earth, and you bump into them, you've never met them before, and you don't know them, and then you meet them, but it's like, oh, I feel like I've known you forever. And if they are a member of your soul family, you literally have known them forever, because you've known them for eons. So now take aside for a second that they're incarnated, and imagine like a whole soul family, like a whole group of souls in the astral realm. So when you do incarnate, these are going to be the ones that help and assist you, because they know why you've chosen to incarnate, what you want to get out of this lifetime, how you're meant to grow and evolve in this lifetime. They know things like Akashic records, like contracts, deals, and agreements, and how you're meant to maneuver through this lifetime. And if you make mistakes, which we all do, and you go on a different path, that's okay, though. Your spirit guides will readjust their guidance for you and how they're meant to help you now that you're on this slightly different path, and so on. So it's constantly fluid. It's not like it's set in stone where you only have one path, but it's your spirit guides and your soul family members who do help you and assist you while you're incarnated, which is
That
really
makes total.
and another thing that's really important too, Kevin, is it's actually really important to meet your soul family while you're like, you can wait until you cross over, but why wait when you could do it now? And
Yeah.
so that's a level 2 thing that I do with my students. Is one of the very first activities. So I get them to meet their soul family, because it's so beautiful. Imagine like, your earth family, but your soul family has total unconditional love. And so why would we want to wait until we cross over to meet them when we could do it now? And it's just, yeah, it's beautiful.
How big are soul families? How many souls consist of a soul family?
I haven't. There's a lot of variables to that. I've noticed ones from hundreds to more, like thousands and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And it's also somewhat fluid as well. Like I'm actually checking this right now, where it's not like one set number. I'm getting that, like, let's say for example, you, Kevin, you have a certain number rate in this moment, but in 6 months or a year from now, there could be a different group, like different, slightly different numbers as
With
they
people
keep
incarnating,
go.
going back.
Yeah, you got it. And I'm getting, it's not, it's kind of like our spirit guides, like I say 3 to 5, but sometimes you have one that I call like a visiting spirit guide that's not a full-time guide all
Yes.
the time. So you have usually one primary guide and then many secondary guides on the peripheral, but then sometimes it's not too common, but every once in a while I have a student who has a guide who is kind of like I call a visiting guide, because they're not really considered a primary or secondary. They're more just, they pop in from once in a while and
I
help you.
call them part-time guides.
Yeah, yeah. And
Right?
then so if you think of it like a soul family example now, there's some that come and go, like not too frequently, but they're kind of on the peripheral of the soul family. So sort of like extended family.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do your spirit guides wake you up in the middle of the night and give you messages?
Oh yes, yes, all the time. So
Why?
the
Why do they
reason
have to wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning?
the reason why they do this is because what happens is we are in a more conducive state to channel. So I
Yes.
teach things like we go into things like dream walking, dream interpretation, interpreting dreams, and all those things. And so what happens is when we're in our waking hours, a lot of us, our mind is like go 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 go, like a gazillion miles a minute, what they call like the
Yes.
monkey mind, the brain. They're just like, go 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 and so fast. And so they're trying to communicate to us during our waking hours. It's usually us that are like oblivious to them and their messages and all that. So they'll try and attempt to try to get messages through to you when you're in a more conducive state and you're more in that like what is it, alpha, delta, whatever state that when you're sleeping. So welcome it. A really cool thing you can try to do if you want to really play with this is while you're sleeping is you can actually, instead of just being a passerby or like a passive person in the dream, you can actually try work and practice on actually like maneuvering your dreams and being in charge of your dreams. And then if you come across somebody in your dream that is like a person, go talk to them and speak with them and ask them questions. And oftentimes that's your spirit guide and things like that. So you can actually practice doing that, and it's really cool and really beautiful and fun at the same time.
Now, random souls and or lost souls will also wake you up the during your sleep. Is there a way that you can prevent that from happening?
Right. So basically, we're talking about protection. And a lot of people, what I'm trying to maneuver my students away from is being that fear base where they think they always need to do protection. And I'm
Yes.
not saying that it's not necessary for like a period of time. However, where I want to get all my students is to a point where they could just go and live their life and they don't have to worry about any of this stuff because they have the infrastructure, they have the like the strength. And let's your auric field, there's many aspects that help you with protection, but your auric field is one of the main ones. So when your auric field is nice and strong and solid and it's healthy, you're less permeable to things that are not of the light. Like we talked about earlier, not everything of spirituality is of the light. And so eventually where I want to get my students through is like the 90, like the bulk of the time, you are just always protected and going around living your life. So back like a few years ago, I used to constantly being like I was psychically attacked and I was being attacked by things that's not of the light, like other souls and things like that. And it's because my system was very permeable to these kinds of things. And so I could always be focusing on protection, this protection, 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 protection. However, one of the things I do with my students is I actually go through like different like upgrades, spiritual upgrades, enhancements for their different systems, because there's a whole bunch of different systems that make us up as a human. Like I've identified over 80 different type like components that are non-physical that make us up, and we want them to all be healthy and working in unison, working together. And then we have this nice strong like I just walk into any room, or if I go to bed, or it doesn't matter where I'm at, it like I'm just solid in who I am, and pretty much nothing gets through to me anymore. Like it's very very rare. And the odd time it does, I've developed tools on how to deal with that, and I teach my students how to do that. But I don't, at this stage of my development, I don't have to worry so much about protection like I used to just a few years ago. And that's where the enhancements, the attunements, the activations, the spiritual upgrades, all that stuff over time, it really does matter, so that eventually you don't have to worry about it. You can just go live your life and you're good to go.
That makes a lot of sense. We're going to wrap it up with this last question. Why are some spirit guides more subtle than others?
Yeah, so as we get into the more advanced channeling training that I teach you, like especially level 2 and beyond, is you'll notice that each guide has their own what I call energy signature components. So like this guide might feel like soft and gentle, and this other guide might be a bit more strong and prominent and things like that. And it's because each guide helps us with a different area and a different capacity. So let's say, for example, one guide is really like, I'm a go-getter. I want you to really like go out there and do very active, pragmatic activities towards your business or towards your career, your job, your whatever your career goal is, and like basically get stuff done. Like let's go, chop chop.
Come
Like
on.
come on. So in this scenario, this hypothetical scenario, that guide might be its energy might be very strong. Like you could literally like put your hand into this guide and feel the energy. It's like whoa, like that's like just really prominent. And the messages that this guide gives you, the way that this guide might talk to you, might be very like specific, precise, and direct. And because that's what you need for encouragement in that area of your life. And then in this hypothetical scenario, let's say, for example, you have a female guide, and this guide is here to help you to be maybe more heart-centered and open heart-centered with your relationships, more compassionate, just more gentle, maybe with raising your children, just using an example, or
Yeah.
grandchildren, something like that. And so being like that kind of that mean parent, or that angry kind of grandparent, or whatever it might be, that this female guide in this example, she might come in and be like, very like, come on, Ken, let's feel into your heart center, open your heart, put yourself in their shoes, understanding, compassion, things like that. And when you feel her presence, she's almost very wispy, very etheric, very light, soft. The way she speaks to you is like understanding and compassionate for what you're struggling with your own struggles, demons, suffering, whatever wording, labeling you want to put around it. But she gets it, but she's like, you can move through this. Just try to give those around you grace, and try to give yourself some grace and compassion as you're working through being more heart-centered and loving and compassionate towards others. So each guide does this specifically. It's not by accident. They all have their own different energy signature components, and there's a lot of them. And that's because they're here to help you very specifically with those areas, and they want you to get the most out of them.
Awesome. Oh, I love that answer. It gave me goosebumps. Tammy Harris says, hi, Ken.
Hi, Tommy.
Where are you from, Tammy? Or do you know where Tammy's from?
Yeah, just outside of the Calgary region.
Just outside of the Calgary region.
Yeah.
I call it the horseshoe around Calgary. Yeah. Ken, if someone wants to learn how to channel, where can they reach you?
Yeah, so channelinginc.com. Just go there. There's all sorts of certification programs. I suggest starting with the Channeling Level 1 workshop, and that's 14 hours of training. It's phenomenal. You get that foundation under your belt. And then with that, it's a prerequisite for Level 2, where we do really cool advanced stuff, mediumship and channeling all sorts of different people's guides, your guides, all sorts of really, really cool advanced stuff. And then off to Level 3, the expert level. And you can also book a one-on-one with me through my website, channelinginc.com. Just go there, pick a date and time that works for you, and you're good to go. And
That's awesome. Now, what do you say to somebody that's been in the industry? I hate using that word when I use spirituality, but it is an industry. I don't know why it bugs me. It's just one of those.
The discipline.
Discipline, the community. What do you say to somebody who's been practicing, let's just say, Reiki for 25 years, and they've just met Ken through this show, and they're like, I don't need level 1, I need level 3. What do you say to someone like that?
So the biggest suggestion I suggest to people, no matter where they're at, whether they're brand new beginners, they're just going and starting their awakening, or whether it's someone who's been in this 20, 30 years, is get some formal training. on how to channel. Like, because a lot of people, and it's not their fault. Like, I used to think this too, like, is where, some people might come across my path and they're like, they think that they're up here channeling where they are. And it's not that they're not. But then what happens is, as they start to learn, like through taking my training, let's say channeling level 1, you're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff you never knew, like stuff that will blow your mind. And I've never had one person, not one ever, who's been like, oh my God, I got so much more out of that than I ever expected. Like, it's, each level comes with like a 50 plus page manual. And so when you go through all this, it's extremely comprehensive. Like, we're talking some of the most comprehensive channeling workshops ever. And this is a requirement for the foundations of what you're going to learn in channeling level 1 for the future levels. And so then by the time you get to the channeling levels 2 and 3, where you think you were, you realize, oh yeah, maybe I didn't quite know as much as I do, or wasn't that advanced at it. And that's okay. That's totally awesome. And then by the end of levels 2 and 3, you're way, 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 way beyond it. So it's just being open. Like, one of my favorite people to teach are ones that are open to learning and knowing that they don't know it all. And I don't know it all. And I tell my students that, like, the day that I think that I know it all, I might as well just stop and quit. I'm constantly learning this stuff. However, I work with students at super, super advanced levels. So I have a whole bunch of things that happen after level 3, where there's like things like my animal certification program. That's a 2-day where you become a certified animal communicator. There's a 6-month strategic channeling program that I do with my students, where we go into really, really, really advanced stuff. And then there's this master channeling mastermind group, where we meet 4 times a year and we do super, super, super cool advanced training at that level. And now we're talking insane levels of training and channeling teaching that I do with my students. So levels 1, 2, and 3 are essential for you to do those super, super high advanced stuff as foundational stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, the hour is just about up, Ken. Our next Ask Ken show is going to be October 26th, which is just a couple days before Halloween.
Yeah.
Wow, there's that noise again. Just when I mentioned Halloween. Maybe and I'm just throwing this at Ken, so he's going to look at me like, what are you talking about? What are you going to do to me? Maybe we should do almost a theme night on Halloween for a Halloween show.
Oh, I would love that. I purposely every year when I set up my calendar, I'll teach a workshop on the Halloween weekend on purpose,
Oh, do
because,
you?
yeah, on purpose, because like, what a better way to celebrate Halloween than, channeling spirits and stuff. Like, I love
See,
it.
it's funny, and it just came up on the weekend. Halloween has never been my favorite holiday. Even I can remember, even as a child, it's not. It's just I'm not a big fan of the whole dress up and yeah. Anyway, so
But
let's.
what's fun about it? It's like, when now, like, I agree, tend to agree with you, Kevin. But now, like, now that I'm into spirituality and I I channel all the time, like, oh man, I just love Halloween because of that reason. And like, I have people there, they'll come visit or whatever, and we'll interact, and we'll be just talking spirituality like the whole time about, spirits and ghosts and, all these different topics. And it's like, doesn't matter what time of year it is. For me, it's just an everyday thing. 365 days a year, I'm always channeling. I'm always talking with spirits. I'm always like, communicating with the other side, and it's just part of my life. And that's where I get my students. I'm like, hey, let's get you to where you can do this all the time, and it's just an everyday part of
That's
your
cool.
life. And the reason why is because we're like 99 point whatever percent non like spiritual, so non-physical. We are spiritual at the core of who we are. This
Yes.
container is just temporary. It's just one of many lifetimes we've had, but that's not who we are. We are spiritual. So how can we not be spiritual, and how can we not live it that way? Like, to just live spirituality is who you are at the core of you, and that's why I do what I do.
Okay, so we've decided on air live in front of millions of people. October 26th, we're going to do a special edition of the Ask Ken show. No, I won't dress up, but it will be all about what's around Halloween. Awesome. Any last words, Ken?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you everyone for tuning in, and feel free to message me or visit my channelinginc.com website, and I make myself available. So have a wonderful day, and I do appreciate all of you watching. Thank you very much.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you at the end.